I went to a very traditionally, historically white college. So it was me, just me a lot of the time. And then add on top of that being black and then wearing nearly knocked over my drink, wearing a hijab, a scarf. And then I eventually started wearing the full dress as well. Oh my God, I remember the day I first came down from like my dorm room wearing my dress and everyone just staring at me. You would have thought that I'd like, I don't know, like I was dressed like Alphabet or something, with a green body, like fully green. Um, but so I was used to being the only black person. I was used to being, I want to say the alien in the room, honestly.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Welcome to Represented, the podcast. I'm Aniki Shuru, racial equity coach for online business owners who want to be intentionally inclusive by building a business that is racially equitable. I created this podcast to normalize a conversation around racial inclusion so that fear is no longer the barrier that gets in the way of doing this work. This isn't about perfection, it's about progress. Whether you're taking your first steps or you're well-versed in the journey towards racial equity, this space is for you. So welcome home, friend. Let's get started.
From coast to coast, around the globe, we are represented.
As an online business owner, you are already leveraging the power of artificial intelligence, AI. But did you know AI bias could be impacting who you are reaching in your business? That's why on the 19th of March, I'll be hosting a free live webinar titled Creating an Inclusive AI Strategy for Your Business. In this webinar, I'll be teaching you 4 key things. Number 1, how to diversify AI training data. I'll share with you practical tips to ensure your AI tools reflect a broad spectrum of voices. Secondly, inclusive AI workflows. I will share with you a blueprint for bias checking at every stage of your operations. 3, how to fix biased outputs. I have a live case study I want to share with you that will help you to identify and address AI-generated biases. And fourthly, AI for representation. I have some incredible businesses I want to share with you as examples of businesses that are using AI ethically to amplify diverse voices and perspectives. This is my personal invitation to you. I'd love for you to join me. Head over to anikishuru.com/AI-webinar. The link is in the show notes to secure your spot. I cannot wait to support you in this way. I remember having a coffee with a copywriter by the name of Liz Green. And Liz, if you're listening to this episode, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. And this was back in 2018, and I needed some help with my bio. I was going to be sharing my story, and I just needed the help of a copywriter to kind of put my thoughts together succinctly. And in spending time with Liz and connecting with her on LinkedIn, I somehow found out about Eman Ismail. And I do believe, Liz, you did make the introduction in terms of letting me know that Eman existed. And then I began to follow Eman. What really drew me to Iman was the fact that that type of representation was almost unheard of. Seeing a Black Muslim woman dressed in a hijab and actively talking business, somebody who owned her own business. She wasn't just a somebody who worked for a corporate organization. She was somebody who owned her business. And there was just something that drew me to her. And so over the years, I've been following Iman and just seeing how her business has evolved. She started a podcast. I started listening to it. I loved it. And then I decided to reach out to Iman and have her on the podcast. And the conversation could not have been better than I expected. Just the connection was genuine. It was there. The lived experiences of us as Black women, the things that we've gone through, and just navigating the world of business. And there is a very transparent way in which Iman shares. You can really see she's a storyteller, and she just shares her story with so much truth. But there's also something she has. She has audacity. She will say something. She will say how she feels. She's not somebody that you can walk over. She's somebody who has really, really grown her muscle through her business. This is a conversation that you need to hear, especially if you're somebody who is perhaps new in business and you are not seeing that kind of representation, or you're somebody who is seasoned in business, but this kind of representation is not one that you see, but it does exist. And I hope it leads you to potentially even, engaging Iman and working with her and through her micro agency. And so here's a little bit about Iman. I love this first line. Iman is the person to call when you want to make money from your emails. That's powerful. As the founder and head email strategist at imancopyco.com, Iman and her small team help you take your email list from has potential to highly profitable. Collectively, their strategy and copy have helped generate millions of dollars for clients. Iman is also an official KIT, formerly ConvertKit partner. When she's not working on email, Iman is hosting her multi-award winning podcast, Mistakes That Made Me, a HubSpot podcast that asks extraordinary business owners to share their biggest business mistake so you know what not to do on your road to success. Without further ado, here is Eman Ismail. Hey there, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Represented Podcast. And today, as per usual, I have a very special guest. And Iman, I am so happy to have you. Thank you so much for saying yes and being here. I've wanted to have this conversation for months now, as you know, before I press record. So welcome to Represented Podcast.
Thank you, Annie. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
As I was doing a little bit of research and I've been aware of your work like back in 2018, there's a copywriter I was working with. I needed her to do a little bit of a bio for me. I didn't feel confident enough. And it was through doing that I got to know of you through LinkedIn. And I began to kind of follow you and eventually on Instagram. So I've known of you and your work for a number of years. And I feel like this is such a full circle moment, having seen how your business has grown from a personal brand to an agency now. But I think what I'm really interested in starting this conversation is you are the person to call when somebody wants to make money from their emails. That is just super exciting. How did you get here though?
Okay, so I was working at a local charity. I was their kind of communications department. I was the entire department. So I used to do everything from writing their website to writing their emails to social media to um, coordinating with all the various you know all our various other departments in other countries, getting case studies from the beneficiaries that we were helping, creating video content, so much. And throughout all of that, I realized that what I loved most was the copywriting. And I
Mhm.
remember like really enjoying the website, like doing the website project because I redid the website. And I really enjoyed creating this brochure. And I remember finishing and my manager saying, "This is the best brochure we've ever had."
Wow.
And yeah, and him saying, I get people coming up to me saying, who is your person who does this stuff? Like people would come to him in the brochure and say, "You guys have really stepped it up. Like, who did this? Who was this?" And I remember just feeling so just amazed and again just amazed by the power of words, first of
Yeah.
all. And in a charity, when you're the copywriter and you're writing all this stuff, and especially with emails as well, I'll tell you why in a second, you really start to understand the power of words because it really impacts how people behave. And so I would write a marketing email and I would be asking people to donate. And then you would see the donations immediately start coming in. And
Wow.
it was mind-blowing to think that your words could have such impact that a person would actually act on what you've said and donate their own money. And it's special when it's for a charity as well and it's for a cause. They actually donate their own money because you inspired them to. And I was just like, oh, I love this copywriting stuff. I just love it so much. I didn't know that at that time that there was a whole industry that was dedicated to just the copywriting. So I discovered that and then started learning more about it. So, signed myself up for courses and stuff. And I was really struggling in that job. I loved the job, but it was in a different city. And I had a then 2-year-old. And it was so difficult because I was driving. I'd drop my son off at nursery in the morning. I would drive to another city, work all day in the city, rush home. Yeah. And actually, I couldn't pick him up. So I had to hire a childminder to pick him up from nursery and bring him home. And then I would get home and I would rush home and just think, please be awake, please be awake, please be awake. And I'd come in and at 2 years old, he'd be lying on the sofa asleep. And the reason he'd be on the sofa was because he didn't want to go to bed without me. So he was waiting up for me and he was trying his best to stay awake. But of course, I come home so late traveling from a different city that he'd always be knocked out. And every day I'd open the door and be like, please be awake, please be awake. And he'd be asleep and I'd just want to cry. And it just got to the point where I just thought, this is not what I signed up for. I can't do this anymore. I, this is not this specific work schedule is not allowing me to be the mother that I want to be. Um, I don't I don't, live to work. I want to work to live. And also this job meant I was doing work in the evenings, I was doing work on the weekends, and I just thought this is insane. And it got to the point where, it was small things that just started adding up, or big things that started adding up. I remember, my son used to get sick a lot, which is so normal when you have a toddler that's at nursery. But I
Mhm.
remember having to ask my manager to take him to the doctors. Like, I need some time in the morning to take him to the doctors. Is that okay? And I remember thinking how bizarre it is that as a grown woman with a child, I have to ask permission to take my son to the doctors. And I just like sat on that and I just remember thinking, to me, that's completely insane. I should be able to take my son to the doctors whenever he needs it without having to check in with anybody. And but then I started to think, am I crazy? Because nobody else seems to think that's crazy. Like it's only me that seems to think there's something wrong with that. Everyone else is fine going to their like traditional 9 to 5 employment. So there must be something wrong with me. Eventually I was like, no, I can't do this anymore. I handed in my resignation. I had a month's notice to work. So in that month I spent just trying to get new leads. I knew that I wanted to go straight into the business and I wanted to try and set up a business because I had tried twice before and failed. But then at this point, after that year in this job, I just knew that traditional employment was not for me. I couldn't handle like the restrictions and the container, the box that it put me in. And I just knew I couldn't thrive in any kind of traditional employment environment. And I needed to be in control of my own life, my own schedule, so that I could live the life that I wanted to. Now, did I actually believe that I'd be able to do it? I'm not sure I did initially, but there must have been something because I quit my job and I did it. And I have to say, I have a really supportive family. I come from a family of entrepreneurs. And so knowing and seeing specifically Black men succeed in entrepreneurship and, just watch as I grew up watching them, knowing that they have their own business and they're doing amazingly. And it showed me that being a business owner is possible. Like there is another path. I think for a lot of people, they don't even see the possibility of another path. But I had those people in front of me showing me that it's possible. And I think I can't overestimate how important that was. And so I had a lot of people around me, my family, who believed in me, who were very supportive. And so, yeah, I decided to go ahead and do it. And I did. I was a generalist copywriter, so I was doing everything, literally everything, from brochures to posters to websites to sales pages. And I did that for 2 years. And I'm glad I did because it gave me a good foundation.
Mhm.
And I learned I kind of learned everything in my industry. And then I narrowed in on email in 2020. And so from then decided, okay, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna niche. I'm terrified because I wonder if like people will stop hiring me because, they still want me to do other stuff and not just email. But I decided to just do it anyway. And then last year, I went from being a solo business owner to launching a micro agency where we now have a team of email strategists and copywriters who they're just amazing.
Ooh, wait, hang on. We gotta rewind this. We gotta go back because uh becoming a mother. First, let's just address the motherhood piece because I feel like a lot of uh people who are not yet parents don't quite understand how life completely changes once you become a parent. And especially if you're going to be the primary caregiver, it's even an added layer of complexity and just how priorities change. The things that you looked at, like it was maybe your corporate job and it was like everything and show up on weekends, do what you need to do. It now begins to feel so different because your priorities have shifted significantly. So the motherhood piece, and I can speak for myself personally, I feel like it led me to where I am today because if I didn't have kids, I don't think I'd be doing this. I don't think I'd be so so um wanting to make a difference in such a big way because of them and future generations through the work that I do. I think I was so comfortable climbing the corporate ladder, my background's in HR, and just like, making it work that way. But motherhood changes. And as you were sharing that story about your son and coming home and you're racing home and you're, will he be awake? Will he be awake? And I know also possibly the guilt, the mom guilt of having that person go pick them up and get them home safe and take care of them until you get home. I can only imagine how that would have been so tearing at you and then making the decision, you know what, this is not working out with for me. It's not in alignment with the life I want to live. I'm going to resign. I'm going to start a business. Can we just acknowledge how big that piece is of motherhood and that decision?
It was huge. It was huge. And you're right about the guilt and there was just so much. And I was depressed at one point. And I'll tell you, I had a very specific conversation that made me realize like that was the point that I realized something had to change. Because I was depressed at that point. Um, and I just felt like a terrible parent because I was always working. And one day at work, I was complaining about something. And my colleague said to me, "Oh, here comes Eman with her big book of complaints again. And I was like, wow. And usually I'd get defensive and well, that's like quite rude, but she was a friend of mine, so she could kind of get away with it. But she was right. I was complaining a lot. And she was sick of me complaining. I was sick of hearing myself complaining. And it was so unlike me. I have always been known for being a very positive, happy, optimistic person. And so for someone else to say that to me was really shocking. And it just kind of like held up a mirror and made me just reevaluate who I was becoming. And I didn't like who I was becoming, this complainer who was just unhappy about everything because I was so unhappy. And I just thought, yeah, actually, you're right. And actually, it's this job that's making me like this. So let me do something about that. Let me change that right now. And then I took 2 weeks off. I actually enrolled myself onto a creative writing course. It was the summer. It was just glorious. When you just, and I just felt like I could breathe. I had this lovely like 2 weeks off, and I spent a week of that at this creative writing course with other writers, learning how to be a better writer. And I was just like, yeah, this is it. I came back after that 2 weeks and handed in my resignation. I was like, yeah, yeah,
You were done.
I'm done. I was done. I was done. And the reason I think for me the motherhood aspect is so important is because it gave me the confidence to resign because I knew that this just wasn't an option. Whereas like you said, if I didn't have my kid and now kids, multiple, I wouldn't have had the courage and I'm gonna say even the motivation
Yeah.
because and I'm one of the most motivated people I know, honestly. But it was still having kids that put the motivation in me to make this work. Like this business is not, the failure is not an option. At every single point, at my lowest points in business, it's always been failure is not an option. So you better just find a way out because right now I get to, pick up my kid, take my kids to school, nursery, whatever. I get to pick them up. I'm home with them over the holidays, every holiday. That's so many weeks throughout the year. I take July's off every year. Altogether, I probably take about intentionally about 10 weeks off a year and then add a couple extra weeks because I have a toddler who gets sick all the time. So, I get to stay home with him when he's sick. Altogether, for the over the past 3 years, I would say I've taken about 12 weeks off every year. And what other arrangement would allow me to do something like that, you know?
Precisely. That is the gift of being a business owner. And this is just it's so incredible to hear these stories because a lot of people and somebody might be listening and going like, I wanted or I want to take the plunge, but I'm so scared because I don't know how it will look like on the other side. And what I really loved about what you said at the beginning, Iman, was that this wasn't your first rodeo. You had tried business twice before and failed.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering, what was it that made you go like, I want to give it a go again, the third time? Was it something that you learned from the other two that you're like, maybe I'll tweak and change things here? What was it that made it work the third time?
Honestly, it was just the idea that I'm not just doing this for me anymore. It's not just because it's a nice idea. I want control of my life. I want to regain control of my life. I want to regain control of my time, my schedule, my decision-making abilities. This isn't just for me anymore. This is for my family, actually. And that determination, and the feeling that, I think also I suddenly realized maybe it's not that I can't do it. Maybe it's just that I don't know how to.
Yeah.
So go out and learn how to. So I started my business in September, and by November, I had my first coach and I joined my first membership, and I worked really hard in that membership. I worked really, really hard, and I just knew that I didn't know. And so I have to go learn. And, I've always been very academic.
Yes.
And so that need to learn and that um like want to learn, it's very natural to me. It's very easy for me. And actually that kind of dynamic of being the student is one that I'm very comfortable in. And so it was like, okay, you got to be a student again. This time you're learning how to do business.
Mm. And was stepping into business and not seeing yourself represented in the online space. We know how white the online space is. Copywriters, I've worked with several copywriters. You'd be hard pressed to really, and they're out there, Black women, Muslim women, but we're not exposed to them because if you're to go on and do a little bit of a search, whether it's on LinkedIn, on Google, or even on social media like Instagram, it's very hard that you will come across that kind of representation. Did that ever was that ever an issue for you that you needed to see it to be it? I know you've mentioned the Black men in your life and you're so inspired by them, but was there that feeling of, I can't see that? Did it ever play a role in how everything kind of fell into place for you?
So it didn't impact me negatively, but I was certainly aware of it.
Yes.
But I my college experience was very white. I was usually always the only black person in the room. I went to a very traditionally historically white college. So it was me, just me a lot of the time. And then add on top of that being black and then wearing nearly knocked over my drink, wearing a hijab, a scarf. And then I eventually started wearing the full dress as well. Oh my God, I remember the day I first came down from like my dorm room wearing my dress and everyone just staring at me. You would have thought that I'd like, I don't know, like I was dressed like Alphabet or something, with a green body, like fully green. Um, but so I was used to being the only black person. I was used to being, I want to say the alien in the room, honestly. And so it annoyed me that I was in another space where there is there are very few people like me. But it didn't stop me or prevent me from doing things. I know that it has definitely, I think there are maybe some opportunities that I haven't gotten that I feel like is probably because of how I look, how I dress, my skin color, whatever. Um, but I learned very early on that just because a space doesn't want me or doesn't feel welcoming to me, doesn't mean that I'm going to exclude myself from that space. If anything, I'm I'm I I'm gonna go where I want to go. So if I want to be in that space, I will make a space for myself.
Was it was it intentional going to a predominantly white university? Was it intentional? You're like, I'm gonna be
No,
okay.
no. It's just that it was again, I was very academic. I did really well. And so I ended up in this space where um it it wasn't the most welcoming space
Mm,
for non-white people, quite frankly. And so there were just so few of us. There were so few of us. And I remember feeling so alone initially. And then meeting up with like the Muslim society and the African Caribbean society, and then feeling like,
mm.
oh my God, I found my people. I can survive here. I can do it.
Yeah,
Um,
yes.
and so no, it wasn't intentional at all. But of course, I knew that that was going to happen. I come from a very multicultural city, and so I didn't quite know how much it would impact me and how difficult it would be. But it really set me up for life. Because even now, I happen to live in a very white area, and so uh, I feel like almost every day is another kind of experience with a microaggression, and it's different now as well because now I'm raising black boys too, and so now we have a whole other layer to this where they're experiencing things and they don't even know what they're experiencing, but I see it for what it is, you know. But it was a very that experience set me up for this now as I'm living now as an adult with kids, but also in my business as well. So it annoys me when I go into spaces and I might be the only black person. Um, I feel often like a token character.
Yeah.
Um, but I also think I see the impact that it has because I do get messages from people. I do get, contacted by a lot of the time Muslim women who feel seen
Yes.
and who feel like it's really great to see someone who looks like me, um, doing business. And I remember when I first saw, well, there were no black Muslims, but I remember when I first saw my now friend, she's called Summer Owais, and she wears a headscarf as well. And she's a super well-respected copywriter. And when I heard her
Yeah.
on a podcast, and I saw what she was doing and the circles that she was in and how much money she was making. And also it was amazing because she lives in Pakistan. And so she has a whole other range of like things that she has to overcome, to be respected and to be seen as an equal. And she was in this US space, dominating this online, US space. And I remember listening to her and thinking, oh my gosh, she's so inspiring. So I know what it feels like to see someone from your community, and you need that. You need it. I remember thinking, oh, I have got to be friends with this person. And that was like maybe 6 years ago. And
Yeah.
I made it happen. She's one of my best friends now. So it's really funny. I was like, I always say to you, you don't actually understand how much I had to like stalk you because I knew the minute I came across you, we had to be friends.
We were made to be friends.
We were
Oh,
made to be friends.
wow. It is almost difficult to articulate what it is like when you see somebody else from a similar background, when you see your person, so to speak, and you're like, they're doing the thing and they're doing it so well at a whole different level. I hadn't even thought of the possibility of things being in this way. It just has the capacity to just push you so much more and to stand on both your feet a lot more firmly, steady. And I really,
Mhm.
really love that you've shared that story. You've been in powerful spaces too. You've been part of many events. You've been invited as a speaker. You've got an incredible podcast with amazing guests. As I told you when I was getting in touch with you, I love your podcast because I feel like I'm talking to a bestie. I feel like I'm listening to somebody else who's going through the ups and downs of business and normalizing that because a lot of times the dominant narrative really is how to make this and how to do that and how I made this in like 3 months and you're like, oh my goodness, really? What is wrong with me because I'm not doing what, I'm not seeing the success that you have. And so I'm wondering, what are some of the things that you feel both as a Black woman and a Muslim woman that people could do to make their spaces more welcoming, more inclusive? Because this is very much the core of what I teach. It's very much why a lot of online business owners will sign up to work with me because I want to understand, what am I missing? Why is it that I just keep attracting the same people, even though I want to be as inclusive as I can and as welcoming as I can? But what is it that I'm doing wrong? Perhaps what could you shed light on in terms of welcoming spaces?
hmm I think it's really interesting because you said, you used the word want, so like people who want to invite more diverse people into their spaces. And I think that's the thing. You need to do it needs to be so much more than a want. Like there needs to be action behind that because, people are watching you and whether it's fair or not, we're all making assumptions and understandings of what you show us and based on how you act and what you do. And so, for example, I regularly pitch to be on podcasts. I will never pitch to be on a podcast where I see that all the guests are white because what that tells me is you're not interested in interviewing anyone who's not white. And then that host might say, no, no, it's not that. It's just that that's the people that, that pitch themselves, like, whatever. And it's that, well, that's the point. If you were concerned or if you were interested, you would go out of your way to make sure that your, you know, guests were a, a diverse range of people, but you don't care. So I'm not going to ever pitch myself to be on your podcast because it's an unwelcoming space. It's not made for me. And actually, I don't want to support a podcast or a space that doesn't include and doesn't think about this. And it's funny because I come across a lot of online business owners who think that they're good. I'm on the right path because a lot of the time as well, a lot of the time it's white women who have like maybe a whole panel of women and they're like, look how diverse my panel is. I'm so proud of my diverse panel. Not a non-white person in sight. Not one. So diversity to me clearly means something different than it does to you. And I even had a friend who did she was a speaker at a big conference and it might have been a conference that I might have pitched myself for once upon a time until she told me this story, which was she was speaking to the event organizer and he was saying, "Oh, I'm so happy that you've, come on board. It's so great to have a Muslim woman, a visibly Muslim woman in hijab come on stage and whatever, blah, blah, blah." And he was like, "Yeah, I've never been able to find any Muslim women to do this. And I just don't know many Muslims. Like I don't have any Muslim friends or anything like that. I just don't know Muslims. I don't know any Muslims." And it's like, no, you don't you don't want to know any Muslims. You're not interested in knowing any Muslims. That's why your circle has no Muslims, you know? And so it's really about doing and yeah, showing people that you are a safe space, that you're providing a safe space. Um, because I think also the problem with being often the only person, the only black person in a room is that everyone looks to you for education. They want to be educated by you. They want you to explain everything. And then there's the whole, you feel like you can't be totally yourself. You can't be totally open. Um, and it's exhausting. It's exhausting. It's so exhausting. And so,
It is because
yeah.
it takes up so much space. The whole identity thing takes up so much
Hmm.
space. So if you're there for something specific, you end up not getting what you went there for because this identity, the way people see you, takes over. And so
Hmm.
you've got to balance that. You've really, oh my gosh, it's such a difficult dance when you're in a black body, predominantly in white spaces, because and if you're the only one, you're looked at in a certain way. There's certain expectations, or yeah, tell us about this, or how you behave in that space, how you come across. It's like you have the entire black community on your shoulders, like you.
Okay, I'm so glad you said that because that's another thing. You don't just represent yourself, you represent your entire community. And somehow whatever you do or don't do reflects on your entire community. And that is a heavy burden to bear.
Absolutely.
I was crushed for so long under that burden, um, for so long until I had to free myself from it because I was like, I can't, no, you can't carry that as a single individual. You can't do it. And it's so unfair. It's so unfair.
It is incredibly unfair. And that is why, for me, these conversations are so important, centering the voices of Black, Brown, women of color is so important because for them to have gotten to where they are today, they have had to shoulder so much to get here. And the more we hear these stories, the more we normalize them, the more we don't know who these stories are impacting, but we just need to keep sharing them and hearing them. And when I think of your story, Iman, how you've gone from having just being a solopreneur and then an agency. And I was going through your beautiful website, which I know you kind of redid not too long
Thank
ago. It
you.
is absolutely beautiful. I will pop the link in the show notes because y'all who are listening or watching, you need to go and check it out. It pops with so much color. And the information in there, it's just full of wealth information. You can spend hours and hours over there. And I'll mention a couple of things that I came across that really got me so excited. But how did the idea of an agency, micro agency is what you're calling it, come into play?
Mm. Well, I think it goes back to me just always thinking about life first and building a business that helps me build the life that I want to live. If it doesn't do that, I'm not interested in it. That's the only reason I'm in business is to be able to design my life in the way that I want it. And it got to the stage where I was hiring writers to work with me, very kind of informally. And I really liked being able to take a step back and get out of like the weeds and the execution and the deadlines and be able to take that take that seat, that role of just overseeing. And I think I got tired really because I've been doing this for 6.5 years now. And so I was like, I need to find a different way to do this. I don't always want to be, you know, going just from deadline to deadline, deadline to deadline. I'm actually tired, and I want to find a different way to work. I want to be able to do the more creative stuff because I have a really big vision for my business, but I can't do it if I'm the one that's talking to clients every day and that's delivering the work to clients every day and doing the copy every day. And so I understood that I needed to take a step back. I wanted to create more time on my calendar to even just things like not be on sales calls and things like that in the evenings. So we have a sales lead now on our team who does the sales calls because a lot of the time I have international clients, and so I put my kids to sleep and then I run back to my office because literally my toddler will fall asleep at 7:57, 7:58, and then I have a call at 8 o'clock in
Hey,
literally 2 minutes. So I've got to run. Yeah, and I'm exhausted. And it was actually my son who said to me, he's 9, he said to me, "You're always on calls in the evenings." And I was like, that's true. I am. I really am. And I don't want to be. And so I made the decision that one of the people I was going to hire was going to be a sales lead to take over sales calls. And so um that was just again just identifying like where is my time going, where is my energy going. I want more time to be with my kids, to be able to put them to sleep without stressing and watching the clock and thinking, oh my God, they need to fall asleep, they need to fall asleep. It's so stressful. And then also I need more time to be able to just think strategically and think big and do the things that I want to do. And it felt like my business was becoming a bit reactive. because I was reacting to like what came to me, the opportunities that came to me, versus, and I've always been this person who very much goes out and seeks opportunities, but I no longer had the time or the brain space to do that. And so it feels like I'm almost regaining control of the direction that I want to go in because I'm working on stopping being reactive and starting to be proactive. And so, yeah, it's funny because I've always said I'll never ever be an agency. And yeah, I was like, I reserve the right to go back on what I said.
Okay.
Because I think what I thought an agency was, I realized that the stuff that I don't like about agencies, I don't have to do that. I can build
Mm.
my agency differently and
Yeah.
build it the way that I want to build it. And so, yeah, we've been working on that, and it's been very fun. Most recently, I hired a project manager. So what that has done has it's meant that I literally have to take everything out of my brain that's, running the business
Yes.
and document it so that she can do it too. And that has been a very interesting exercise. But I think it's also been great because it forces me, when you have a team, it forces you to first of all, like say, do the things that you say you're going to. Now you have people waiting on you and
Yeah.
waiting for you and who need you to do the thing that you said you were going to do. That there's that accountability. And then also it has made me stop thinking on like such a small scale, and it's opened up my mind to kind of bigger possibilities.
Mhm. You said something that just keeps coming back to me that you have a big vision for your business. What's that vision, Iman?
So I have the agency side, the email agency side, but I also want my business to have a media company arm. So we have the email agency side. We currently have the digital product side as well. We sell courses, masterclasses, workshops, that kind of thing. And then also, I want the media side. Right now, I do have a podcast. I have Mistakes That Made Me,
Yeah.
and that's doing well. That's on the HubSpot podcast network. That's great. But there's so much more I want to do with it. But again, I don't have the time. And if I had more time, I would write more. I would write articles and, blog posts and maybe venture into video. And there's so much more that I want to do. And so it's these three arms: email agency, digital products, and media.
Wow. I don't know. There's just something about hearing you speak and the big dream vision that's just kind of lighting me up inside. When you hear somebody's vision and you hear the work that they're putting in or what they foresee for the future, it just stirs something in you, and that's what you're doing for me. Um, with the rise of AI, a lot of people who would have potentially hired a copywriter going like, okay, I'll just get onto ChatGPT, have a conversation, and I get help to whether it's creating content or strategizing or, social media assistance, whatever it is. Talk to me about how does your agency, specifically what you're doing right now with emails, how are you staying above it all so that somebody goes like, yeah, I know ChatGPT is there, but I'm going to still call Iman because this is how I want to build my business.
What's funny is that the thing about AI is that you still need to know the thing that you're asking it to do, right? So if you're asking it to write email, you need to be able to instruct it on how to do that. And you'll only have that knowledge if you have that email strategy and copywriting knowledge behind you. And so I am not concerned because even with AI, people who go to AI to write emails still couldn't produce the emails that an email strategist or copywriter not just could write by themselves, but even the emails they could write with AI. They can write better emails with AI because they know they have the technical knowledge and information behind them to help get AI to where it needs to get to. And so, but I think one of the biggest things is that we focus on email strategy. And it's really funny because somebody recently came to me and showed me some emails that an email copywriter had written for them. And the copy itself was great. Like she was a good copywriter, but the email strategy, when
Mhm.
you looked at the whole strategy, the whole sequence, it was not good. And it was just a great reminder of how it's so important to be a strategist as well. And to not just be able to do the execution, but to be able to do the thought work behind the execution. And that's what high ticket, high value clients are paying for when they come to us. They want us to do the brain work that they understand that they don't know. They don't know this. They're experts in their own field, but they don't know about email strategy. They can write emails. All my clients, have a newsletter and will be sending their own emails. And sure, the individual emails they're writing are engaging and nice to read. But at the end of the day, usually they're still like, well, I'm still not selling anything. Like, great, I write a good email and, people like it, but
Yeah.
nobody's buying anything. And so um, I think that the difference is because don't get me wrong, there are clients, I mean, there are copywriters in the world who have said, I've lost all my clients to AI. They've all replaced me with AI. But those aren't the kind of clients that would come to us in the first place. Those aren't the clients that are our clients who value strategy, brain work. Um, ultimately, they're paying for our brains, not just for us to do the writing.
Wow. And also human connection. It's the human
And
connection.
human connection, of course.
So, talk me through the process of what it would look like to work together. So, I'm listening to you. I know you're really incredible at emails. Having a strategy is key. I know you do sales pages as well. Talk me through what the process would kind of look like for an online business owner who's listening. I know some of the people who tune into this podcast have courses, they're coaches, they're course creators. And so, what would the process look like if somebody got in touch and said, I need help with my emails, but I also need help with my sequence, to nurture people. And when I open doors to my program, how do I keep things fresh and how do I keep things, just how do I grow my business from an email perspective?
Well, the first step is always research. So, if we were to work together, the very first thing that we do is research. So, we would send over a briefing questionnaire. That's a very detailed briefing questionnaire. My clients are always like, "Oh, wow, this is long," and I always say to them, "Yeah, I did. I warned you. It's a long one, but it gives us everything that we need to know about you, your business, your audience, what motivates you, what inspires you, and also tells us about you, your tone of voice, all that kind of stuff." And then we get on a call with you afterwards as well. We have an hour briefing call and we go over any kind of like missing gaps that the briefing question didn't answer for us. And then we go straight into customer research. So either we always send customer surveys, but we might also do customer interviews as well. And so that means we are surveying and or interviewing both buyers of your course or membership or program, whatever it is,
Yeah.
but also non-buyers too. So we want to get in the head of the buyer and figure out why they bought. Why did they buy your thing? What motivated them? What was the trigger conversion for them? What were the hesitations and objections that they were feeling and experiencing that almost made them not buy? And since they did buy, what was it that triggered them to buy and overcome those hesitations? What is it that they love most about your course? What do they love most about the course creator, you know? So we're really getting inside their head so that we can understand them from a psychological and emotional perspective. Because the truth is all buying decisions are emotional. All of them are emotional. It's so funny because I saw something come in my inbox the other day and I thought, oh, that's £27 a month. Oh, I'd never pay £27 a month for that. And I immediately realized, oh, that's just because I don't value it. I don't value it. It's an emotional purchase that I haven't attached any value to. Whereas for someone else, they'll see that value. It'll be an emotional purchase for them, and they'll go, yeah, I need that. I want that. So we're trying to get into the mind of the buyer, but then also we need to get into the mind of the non-buyer as well. So why did they not buy? What hesitations and objections were they experiencing or feeling that made them not buy? What were the struggles that they were going through in the first place, the pains that they were experiencing that made them even consider buying? And so by understanding the brain and the mind of the non-buyer, we can figure out what we need to explore throughout the email sequence. And then after we've done that research, it's a long process because it's a lot. We then come up with the strategy. So now we know, okay, these are the points that we need to hit on and that each email needs to hit on in order to take someone from, this sounds interesting to, oh my gosh, yes, I want to buy this. I want to join. And so after we've done the customer research, we go straight into the strategy, email strategy. Once we've mapped out the email sequence, we map it out first on an email storyboard. Then we start writing. So then we write the sequence. Then actually that's where I also come in and I copy chief the sequence, which means I go over it with my eyes and my brain as well. I've also come in at the strategy stage, so I kind of always know what's going on with every sequence. And it's very important that we're able to justify our strategic decisions and that they make sense. And it's funny because you see, a client might say, oh, I'm not sure about this. I don't think that's a good idea. And you need to be able to say, this is exactly why we did this, this is the reason, because the voice of customer research told us that, XYZ. So everything has a justification, everything has a reason for it, being done. There's a reason we did it the way that we did it. So once I've come in, copy chiefed, had, put my brain onto it also, the client then gets a chance to review it. They have a round of revision so they can do any edits. And we usually don't have many. I just woke up to an email this morning that said, I love it. I think she said, I've made 3 comments and there are basically no edits. So let's go, which is always the best response.
Yes.
And then after that, we take it through to our editor who edits and proofreads everything, she makes sure everything is kind of polished to perfection. And then it's yours to put into your email service provider and send out. And then, of course, also we monitor how the launch goes, how the sales go, and then discuss, if there's anything that we learned from this launch that we can put back into the sequence, that we can optimize the experience with.
Mhm. That is absolutely incredible. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I'm going into my next launch, you need to get in touch with Iman. And I was going through your website and I came across, actually, no, I'm on your mailing list and I did the quiz. Your quiz is brand new, I think. And
Yes, very new.
it tells you what kind of email writer you are, like what I'm a storyteller. And I really, really, really enjoyed the sequence that was coming through as somebody who's been in business for many years, kind of predict what's coming, but it's just I'm seeing your style and I'm seeing your how you're strategically putting certain things in their place. And there's this one where you spoke about the teardown, Kylie Jenner and the missed opportunities. I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was so,
Oh.
I don't know if it was a podcast episode or if it was just a blog. I think it was just a blog.
Yeah,
Did
it
a
was a
video.
block. Yeah, with a video. Yeah.
Oh my
So
God.
I analyzed the email strategy of big brands, and one of them I did was Kylie Cosmetics. And I mean, their email strategy was not great. And but the thing is, people love to see that and hear that and know,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, it's not just me. Like the billion dollar brands are struggling with the email too. And so I go through it and I walk us through it and I point out the things that are working well,
Mhm.
the things that are not, and then also missed opportunities that they really need to kind of like figure out. And also, hey, Kylie Jenner, you can hire me if you want.
I know that was so cool. I really love reading that. And then also, you've creatively just added on that blog the responses of your readers, what they're saying, and how you
Yes.
captured that. That was just so, it was just very creative. It's just, you can see that there has been a strategy behind that. It wasn't just like, oh, this is what they did right, this is what they did wrong. Like, it was just very well analyzed, and I really enjoyed that. Even though I'm not a Kardashian Jenner follower or watch the shows or
Hmm.
anything, but that really, really got my attention. Um, your podcast.
And by the way,
Mhm.
thank you. I just want to say just thank you for that. And I just want to point out that that goes back to the idea of people hire Iman Kopiko for our brains. It's for how we think. And so the goal with that is to demonstrate how we think and
Yeah.
how our email strategy brains work so that people can see we don't just go just write a bunch of emails because it's fun. No, there's a whole system, process, education behind this. Watch us do it in action.
Oh, it was brilliant. It was brilliant, honestly. Just a beautiful analogy. And we have to talk about your podcast. We're getting to the end. Hang in there if you're still listening, or you're probably going like, I don't want this to end, which is great. Um, Mistakes that made you. Is there one or two that you can think of? So that's the name of your podcast, and you bring people on and they share the mistakes that made them. But for you, is there one or two, maybe recently, or maybe, I don't know, that comes to mind right now, and you're like, yeah, this kind of made me.
There's one that I will eventually record. I'll record a full episode about this, but it was actually a client and it was a really bad fit client. The worst experience I've ever had in my business. And after I actually fired her. I was gonna say after I finished working with her, but no, after I finished firing her as a client, and I was just like, there's just no. I changed my entire business
Wow.
because I thought, what am I doing that I would attract such a person to me and my business? I changed everything. And if I could go back if I had the chance to, if someone gave me the chance to kind of like remove her from my life so that I never met her, I would have to say no because she had such an impact on the
Wow.
way I did business. And I have never had a client like her again. And I have only worked with the most amazing people ever since. But that was a very difficult time and a very difficult process. One of those clients that makes you lose sleep. Like you wake up in the night and you can't sleep because this person is on your mind. And, they make you anxious. I had to like filter her emails out of my inbox because seeing her name in my inbox made me so anxious.
Yeah.
It was a real lesson. And the mistake was that I saw the red flags in the briefing call.
Mhm.
But she was my biggest client at that point. And so I remember thinking, just deal with it. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. And also maybe you're over exaggerating, maybe it's not gonna be maybe she's not gonna be as bad as you think she is.
Won't be worth.
And so I saw that, yeah, she was a whole lot worse. But I saw the signs, and when you think, oh, but I did it anyway, and
Yeah.
that was the mistake. But I've never done that again since. To the extent that about a year ago, I was on a sales call with some guy who was interested in working with us, and got to the part about my payment policies, that kind of thing, and he started making faces while I was talking that were quite just rude. He didn't say anything. He's just his facial expressions were rude, and he raised his eyebrow, and I just found it really disrespectful. And I
Yeah.
just thought, yeah, because of that eyebrow, it's a no. Literally, he raised his eyebrow at me, and I was like, no,
No,
no, thank
this
you.
is not gonna work.
Goodbye, all the best.
Mm.
Yeah. And so it completely changed my understanding of who I wanted to work with, how I run my business,
Yes.
um, what are red flags? Also, who's my ideal client? Because I think before that, I thought that an ideal client was someone who had the budget to work with me. And then after that experience, I realized, oh, it's so much more. It taught me so much.
That bit about ideal client is the one who can afford to work with you. That's not true. It's not
Hmm.
entirely true. No, 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 no. Ooh, that is a powerful point. Hmm. Okay. Before we get to the end, I know you're preparing to go on mat leave and baby number three. And
Yes.
your agency, it'll still be open. You're still open for business. What are you, and I know you've done an episode, I haven't listened to it yet, with one of your team members talking about taking maternity leave and how this will be different from the first time.
Hmm.
So what's a couple of things that you can share with us? Because we began with motherhood and we're kind of now bringing it to a close with motherhood yet again. What are you doing to prepare yourself so that you can take time off that feels meaningful, where you'll be present with your baby and your other babies? What are you doing to prepare your business for mat leave?
I think the biggest thing is having a team in place that I trust, that I really, truly, just genuinely trust, because I wouldn't be able to step away if I didn't. And I just feel so good about the people that I have in place. I've made some bad hiring decisions in the past, which again taught me a lot and gave me a lot of experience that I probably needed. And I now feel really good about the team that I have in place. And also just having them be super supportive as well and having them be committed to allowing me to have the time that I need. So we're all on the same page and we all have the same goal. And I have a team that won't allow me to work, even if I wanted to. They'll be like, "What are you doing? Go, go away."
Yeah. That's
So,
brilliant.
yeah.
That's powerful. Having a team that you can trust, that is everything. And so, Iman, as we bring this to a close, there's one question that I ask all my guests on the podcast. And our question is, if fear wasn't a factor, how do you think you'd show up in your work?
Wow. Um, if fear wasn't a fact, it's probably things like who I would pitch to be on the podcast and who I'd invite to come and have conversations with me, and things like the potential clients that I might pitch without being afraid of the rejection
Yeah.
of either being ignored or, them saying no. Because I do pitch, but I still think that if I was really honest with myself, there's a whole other like list of people that I'd also add to my pitch list if it wasn't for honestly fear of rejection, which I try really hard not to have, or maybe not to have, but I try hard to push through it anyway. But it definitely still impacts me.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And I do hope that whilst you're on leave, that you're adding onto that list some of those people who scare you. And you just never
Yes.
know where that might lead to. Kylie Cosmetics, if you're listening, if you're listening,
Come hire us. We can help
come
you.
get them. Oh, what is the best place that people can connect with you?
Well, if you want to have a look at our services and how we can help you, head straight over to the website, emancopyco.com. I'm going to assume you're a podcast lover because you're here. So you have to check out my podcast, Mistakes That Made Me. That's where I interview extraordinary business owners and ask them to share their biggest business mistake. So you know what not to do on your road to success. Um, and you'll find that wherever you listen to podcasts. And of course, you can find me on socials as well at Eman Copyco.
Beautiful. Iman, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. It has lit me up in my belly. I feel so excited. There's just something about just hearing your journey that's just given me a bit more oomph. And I know it's done that for somebody else who's listening. Thank you so much for being here. All the very best as you welcome baby number 3. And I can't wait for you to get back and hear you on the podcast and just hear how life is now as a mama of 3. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Annie.
We are represented. We are represented. We are represented.
Thank you so much for tuning in. Why don't you go ahead and hit that subscribe button and leave a review so this podcast can reach more online business owners, and together we can begin to normalize racial inclusion in the online coaching space. I'd love to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where this podcast episode was recorded, the Wiradjuri people in central New South Wales, Australia. Music produced in Nairobi, Kenya by Patrick St. P. Mbaru and Kambua Mathu. Vocals by Joanne Matata.
Represented from coast to coast.